You are listening to Confessions of a Counselor podcast. Here we will talk all things mental health in bite-sized chunks. Hello and welcome to Confessions of a Counselor. I'm your host, Janice, and in today's episode, I thought we would discuss a topic that's been coming up more and more often in sessions with clients, and I think is something that's really important to start having more conversations about. So that is neurodivergence. So when you hear neurodivergent, what do you often think of? I think for many of us, the top things that kind of come to mind are either ADHD or autism, or maybe a combination of both. These are kind of the predominant conversations that are happening in society today. And while these are certainly significant in the conversation, and I think things need to continue to be discussed and shared, I want to kind of broaden the perspective that we take today. So in the truest sense, neurodivergence refers to all brains that diverge from typical norms. So what we say is kind of the normal operating brain, and includes a vast spectrum of brains that can be wired differently, leading to unique experiences, strengths, and challenges. This understanding, I think, is really important when we start to have conversations of what's happening in our brains and why are we experiencing what we experience. So oftentimes our conversations lead to like, why is my brain doing this thing? And I talk about that in terms of kind of the norm, right? Air quotes, norm brain experience. So especially when we're talking about this therapeutic process, I think we really need to start to understand what's happening inside of our brains. In my work, I aim to help people. In my work, I help people in understanding this, how our brains are functioning and what their brains are actually trying to support them in doing. So because this is so important, our brains are always working to keep us safe, to help us navigate the world. Sometimes the strategies that our brains take on aren't always adaptive, or they may not appear to always be so adaptive. And I think that when we're talking about a neurotypical brain versus a neurodivergent brain, that line gets muddied of what's adaptive versus what's maladaptive. So I think this can start to cause a lot of distress in a neurotypical centric world, right? So when we're talking about this is adaptive and this is maladaptive and this is normal and this is not normal, when we take a step back and think, but not all brains operate the same way, now we can be starting to add challenges to someone else's experience that might not actually have to be challenges. So what are we doing that's kind of maybe either causing masking or causing more distress than is needed? So let's consider an example. Someone who has a highly sensitive nervous system might experience the world with a heightened sense of input and experiences of the world. So this can be overwhelming, obviously. And it also means that they might pick up subtle cues or miss things that other people might be more aware of. So they might experience more distressful environments in wearing clothes or being close to people or with noises. But they also might experience joy and beauty in more depth and more experience than someone else. So in therapy, instead of trying to fix the sensitivity, instead of trying to say, stop doing that or do something different, we want to explore how this function, how this experience of the world is trying to communicate with them, and how can we best support that experience to thrive in a world that doesn't support that experience. So this leads us to relate this to neurodivergence. So this leads to adding in the topic of neurodiversity into how do we therapeutically approach neurodiversity in the therapeutic experience. So neurodiversity isn't just a term, it's a social movement, it's an ideology, right? So this is a broader term that we can use to describe the understanding of neurodivergence. It's recognizing that atypical brains are natural and a valuable part of the human experience, that it's not a bad thing to have neurodiversity. In fact, this is really important for the human experience. Just as we have a diversity in plants and animals, we have incredible diversity with humans as well. So embracing neurodiversity means appreciating the differences and recognizing the differences and being able to support those differences. So advocating for inclusion and advocating for supporting a world where not everyone's brain might operate in the same way or come to the same conclusions. And then there's neurodiverse, which refers to a group of people with a variety of different brains. So encompassing both neurodivergent and neurotypical brains. So this emphasizes that there's more broader spectrum to how brains operate, and that many different pathways and development and brain processes happen within our society. So why does all of this matter? I think is a good question. Long, rambly rant about neurodiversity and brains. So why is this important? Because when we start to understand our brains and we start to understand the unique wiring isn't a flaw, then we can start to appreciate the different operating systems. And this is often the example I give, right? A neuro divergent brain is operating on a different operating system, and that's okay. It doesn't mean it's a bad operating system, it just means it's a different operating system. And we can start to cultivate that sense of self acceptance and appreciation and compassion for the fact that our brain is operating on a different operating system. And that doesn't make it a bad thing. We can shift from a place of what's wrong with me or why do I do these things into how does my brain work and how can I support myself with the needs that I have. So in therapy, this is more of a collaborative journey, especially this is one that I'm walking through with a lot of clients, and I'm learning a lot and trying to do my own research in order to support how do we support neurodivergent brains. So it's about peeling back the layers and using that inherent wisdom that we know is within someone to help and support the challenges that are coming up, and how can we work with those to help thrive in an environment that isn't always supportive of that thriving process. So it's about recognizing the incredible efforts that your brain is making to keep you going, to keep you safe, to give you the benefits that a neurodivergent brain offers. So sometimes this comes with really big challenges, and sometimes this comes with a really unique ability to see the world in a different way. So, understanding neurodivergence and embracing neurodiversity and recognizing ourselves as a part of a neurodiverse world helps us to step back and see it as just another thing versus a good versus bad or a neurotypical versus neurodivergent. Can we come together and understand that we need all of those aspects in order to move forward? So, moving away from judgment in towards curiosity helps us to accept and appreciate that vast difference in brains, and that we don't all have to be the same in order to, and starting to embrace that we don't all have to be the same in order to be great humans. So I hope that you learned something about neurodiversity today, and together that we can keep learning together. Remember that our brain is a beautiful thing, and understanding its unique functions is part of the journey that we're on in the therapeutic process. So I hope that we can take time to appreciate and have gratitude for that neurodiversity. Until next time, take care. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Confessions of a Counselor podcast is available anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts on Apple and Android. New episodes are released every Friday. If you enjoyed today's episode, please join the conversation. Leave a review or subscribe to the podcast hosted on Spotify. You can find all these details on janicelyons.com. Until next time, take care.